In the Zone, presented by TD.
It's another edition of In the Zone presented by TD. Ben Ennis and, as always, Mike Wilner, Sportsnet 590, The Fan. Mike, we talk about your attire every week.
Suit up, baby.
And like I said, by the end of the series, you're going to be Mr. Peanut. You're working your way up. Today, you got the jacket the tie.
Next week, pocket square.
I kind of set the standard a little high today. But, no, good job. Good job, Mike.
Well, you know, there'll be a roller coaster of attire, I think, throughout the course of
At some point, though, you're going to be dressed too well that there's just nowhere to go from there.
The problem with tails is that we're sitting down, so
That's
you can't
right.
really
No one will
see
notice it. All right, let's talk about Blue Jays pitching. It's been great all season long, but Brandon Morrow in the first game of that Angels series did something that, well, he almost did something amazing, which is throw a shutout in under 100 pitches, which some people on the internet call a Maddox, which is aptly
cool.
named.
Yeah.
But
he also almost faced the minimum without throwing a no-hitter or perfect game.
Which is awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it was 170 different kinds of awesome.
But this is a different Brandon Morrow than the guy that struck out 17 Tampa Bay Rays, at least the guy that we saw in Game 1 of this series. And it's a new Brandon Morrow apparently this season. He's not enamored as much with the strikeouts, likes putting the ball in play, likes being a pitcher, and I know it's early and people talk about guys pitching and not throwing. It's kind of a cliched thing, but it really does seem like he's doing it.
Here's the weird part about that. You know, he spent all of spring training developing the curve and the change and talking about how he's going to force more contact. He was embarrassed last year that only one double play was hit behind him. And he told me, too, I mean, he looked at last season and how he did so well in the nerd stats and it just didn't translate. He looked at the ERA over 4.5, didn't like it. Looked at less than 6 innings per start, didn't like it. Hated the fact that there was only one double play turn behind him. So he decided this winter to change. And he worked on a changeup and he worked on a curveball and he's trying to force contact and trying to get ground balls. And then he goes out in the game against the Angels and he throws all fastball. 100 of 102 pitches were fastballs and sliders.
Threw 2 curveballs the entire
and
game.
Maybe one changeup.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. And yet, see, I think he turned another corner in that start against Seattle in the Blue Jays back in the homestand where he went 6 innings, but 5 hits, no walks, 9 strikeouts, and got some ground balls, 5 ground ball outs, but really didn't have any double play chances because there was hardly anybody on base. But I think in that start he discovered, well, hold on a second. All this curveball and changeup stuff is pretty good, but I can get outs this way too, and I can get relatively quick resolutions to at-bats. I mean, he only went 6 innings and he threw more than 102 pitches. But I thought when I was watching it, wow, the Mariners really screwed with him, and this is just a chance for him to stick it right up the Mariners, and that kind of gave him a little bit of a boost. But he pitched the same way against the Angels, and even better, getting the 2 double plays, without the curveball and the changeup. And maybe it's enough that they know he has it. You know, that you've got to remember that it's in the repertoire, and it might be coming at you. But if he can do that, if he can do that with fastballs and sliders, I mean, that's ridiculous.
Well, we might be kind of missing the point here as well. Last 2 starts, he hasn't walked a guy. And
3 starts, he's got 1 walk.
Which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's not very Brandon Morrow-esque.
No.
I mean, that was the issue. That was what was holding him back from being one of those frontline starter guys because, yes, he was getting all those strikeouts, which, I mean, we look back, they weren't bad. I mean, they were getting his pitch count up, but they were amazing, but they were getting his pitch count up. Yep. Wasn't getting deep into games.
And he was also getting into deep counts without the strikeouts, too, right? Because it was always 2-2. You know, we saw a few 3-pitch strikeouts in the Angel game. I didn't used to see that because, like you're saying, the walks also come with other deep counts that you're getting outs in, driving the pitch count up.
And when you're throwing strikes, people start swinging earlier in the counts because they know there's not a high likelihood of walking. Let's talk about the lineup as well. A little bit of a shift atop the batting order. We saw it a little bit in spring training. Kelly Johnson, Yunel Escobar swapping spots, 1-2. I don't know if it really makes that much of a difference. If you go to the nerd stats, I know it doesn't make any difference, really, when you're moving guys one spot or the other. And I guess a lot of lineups...
2 thumbs up from me.
You like it?
I do.
You like to have that lefty, though, as the 2-hitter.
No, you don't.
Most guys do, though, with the holding of the runner at first base and the hole on the right side.
Yeah, except that, you know...
Escobar can go to the right side.
Escobar is very comfortable shooting that gap. And we've seen that before. And I remember when the Blue Jays got him 2.5 years ago, I said, this is the best 2-hitter the Blue Jays have had since Roberto Alomar. He is just designed to hit there. He's a great back control guy, hit and run, terrific, and can hit that gap. Kelly Johnson, while a left-handed hitter, is a left-handed hitter not unlike Jim Thome with a lot less pop. Walks a lot, strikes out a ton.
Yeah.
And that's not your ideal two-hitter, right? You want a guy in the second spot in the lineup who's going to make a productive out if he's going to get out. I mean, it's funny because when people talk about like the advanced and the nerd stats and stuff, it's all about walk, 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 walk. But the truth is, job one is get a hit. If you're not going to get a hit, get a walk. If you're not going to be able to do that, then at least do something. Right. Mm-hmm. Make contact, move a runner along, try to stay out of a double play. Kelly Johnson is not good at making contact when he doesn't get on base. And so he's not a great two-hitter. But he is a good leadoff man in that he does get on base a lot. And he'll steal a few more bases than you think, too. And he can, you can play that hit-and-run game with Escobar. And I think, too, with Escobar, if you tell him, look, we're starting the runner, this is a hit-and-run, you have to make contact here and do something, you're taking a little bit of the pressure off. Because he's gotten off to a pretty crappy start, too.
He's got to get the sign down, though. He's got to make sure he knows what's going on.
He's got to stop bunting on his own.
A couple of times.
Don't do that.
Huge news in Major League Baseball. Mariano Rivera going down for the season, maybe his career in jeopardy. Such a freak accident, Mike, and people are getting on him because he was shagging fly balls. He's done this his entire career.
They all do it every game.
I mean, fat guys do it every day, and they don't bust up their ACL.
Yep.
It was just a freak accident. I mean, it could have happened tripping on the sidewalk.
Could have happened throwing a pitch, and I think a lot of people would have been a lot happier if it had happened throwing a pitch. But, yeah, it's just, I mean, this crazy freak accident. Every pitcher in the major leagues shags flies every day. And this, I mean, when's the last time usually if a guy gets hurt in BP, it's because they get drilled by a ball. But I can't remember the last time something like this happened. Total freak accident. Pitchers should not stop shagging flies or anything like that. But it really is too bad.
Yeah.
The guy's pitched since 1995 or 96, never had a major arm injury. He is the greatest closer that the game has ever known. Mm-hmm. And even though he's had 3 huge blown saves in the playoffs, just huge, his overall, I mean, he's got an ERA of .7 in the playoffs.
It's pretty good.
He's second all-time in WHIP in the history of the major leagues. Only Addy Joss had a better WHIP than him, and he pitched for the Indians in like 1903.
I remember him.
Yeah, he's a good friend of yours, I'm led to understand. But, I mean, this is how good this guy was. And honestly, I thought he was going to wrap it up on his own terms, whether it was getting a save at the end of the World Series or hopefully blowing the save, Game 7 of the ALCS, and the Blue Jays beat him and go on to the World Series. But that was how it was supposed to end. It wasn't supposed to end crumpled on a warning track at batting practice. He thinks he might be able to come back this year, which is insane. I mean, that would be a miracle. But I would love to see him at least make it back for, if not one last save, one more season, whatever, because he really does deserve. I hate the Yankees. He deserves to go out exactly the way he wants.
A lot of people, that exact same sentiment. The lasting image for me will be A-Rod, hands on his head.
Oh, my God.
We got to go.
That's the first genuine reaction we've ever seen out of A-Rod his whole career.
I know. It's crazy. Yeah. He's a real human. Before we wrap this up.
Not sure about that.
Yeah. Before we wrap this up, it is kind of crazy to see 2 of the game's best hitters the last couple of years, Albert Pujols, Jose Bautista, struggle just as much as they have this season. Pujols more than Bautista.
Yep.
Bautista's got 4 home runs, but it's kind of crazy. I know we still got to give him a little more time, probably the end of the month at least, before we start freaking out, but it is a little concerning.
It's just strange. I mean, Bautista had almost exactly the same April as he had 2 years ago, and he hit 54 home runs. Right, he hit 4 home runs in April. This year he hit 3 home runs in April and 1 on May 1st. So it's not time to freak out on him yet. He's starting, I think, to hit the ball to right field a little more, to make better contact. Pujols I've only seen the one time, as we do this just after one game of the Angels series, and he looked terrible. But I'm not worried either. I remember one of Frank Thomas's MVP years, he was hitting 180 at the end of May.
Yeah.
So this can happen. It's a new league, it's a new city, it's a whole new everything, and he's trying hard, and I really think he knows I'm trying too hard, but he doesn't want to admit it, and he doesn't know how to stop it, and it may be a lost year for Pujols, it may not, but I think he's still going to wind up over the course of the next 4 or 5 years being pretty awesome.
I hope you're right.
Hopefully. But he will be 50 at the end of the 5 years.
Yeah. That's Mike Wilner. Thanks, buddy. Well, it was bound to happen. Albert Pujols hitting his first homer of the season in Sunday's 4-3 Angels win. The final tally is a career-high 33 games, 139 at-bats between homers. Here's what happened this season before Pujols hit his first homer. Pair of no-hitters, 2 triple plays, 273 players hitting at least 1 homer, including 2 40-year-olds, 1 20-year-old, 1 player that is 5 foot, 5 inches tall. That is ridiculous. Guy that's not quite 5'5", a little taller than that, Mike Cormack from Sportsnet.ca, joining me now. And Mike, you got an interesting article about Jeff Mathis and Mike Napoli. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about it.
Well, it's interesting. I was actually researching a piece on Ron Washington, the Texas Rangers manager, when I came across a link to Mike Napoli's Wikipedia page, which said that his best friend in life was Jeff Mathis, which I wasn't sure how much people were aware of that. So I went down and talked to Mike Napoli in the Rangers clubhouse before a game last week. And Napoli, when I asked him about Yu Darvish, he actually went into a story about he and Jeff Mathis and how far they go back as friends. It actually goes all the way back to 2002 when the two of them were teammates with the Angels Double-A team in Grand Rapids. And actually, the two guys, they're very different baseball players. Napoli's a great hitter, obviously. Mathis is far more renowned for his defensive abilities. Mathis is from northern Florida, almost the Alabama-Georgia border. Napoli's from the south, Fort Lauderdale, very urban area. Yet the two guys really hit it off immediately. They joked at the time about maybe one day coming up through the Angels system, playing together on the big league club. It happened, but it wasn't an easy story. It wasn't like a happy ending right away.
Yeah, it's interesting because those two guys were in a heated position battle pretty much their entire tenure with the Angels. One guy is an offensive genius, obviously in Napoli, Jeff Mathis, until this season, although it's very early yet, in a small sample size with the Blue Jays, he has hit, but in the past, throughout his career, hasn't hit, has played good defense, got a couple of guys competing for one spot. You would think be a little tension there.
There was actually a lot of tension within the fan base. It was a very polarizing debate. A lot of the fans wanted Napoli to play because he was such a great hitter. But Mike Scioscia, the Angels manager at the time, is a bit of an old school guy. He had Mathis in there, and some of the numbers did bear out for Mathis, at least when it comes to pitchers' ERA. Pitchers pitched much better with Mathis behind the plate, but Napoli. But in the eyes of the fans, they wanted Napoli back there. So when push came to shove, and the Angels had Hank Condra coming up behind Mathis and Napoli, they also had Bobby Wilson coming up through the system. First, they moved Napoli to first base before shipping him off to Toronto very briefly, for 4 days anyway, in the Vernon Wells deal. And then a year later, of course, Mathis now finds his way to Toronto. Napoli's with the Texas Rangers. The two guys still stay in touch. But it's actually amazing that internal competition, that heated rivalry internally with the Angels didn't tear them apart as friends.
Yeah, and it's funny because they are friends, and maybe if they weren't friends, they wouldn't share secrets or maybe try and help the other one out as much as they could. But really, the one had skill sets the other one didn't, and if they were able to share those, I'm sure that probably helped them as baseball players.
Sure, absolutely. Even to this day, when I talked to both Napoli and Mathis last week, they said they still talk all the time, even though they're on different teams, about baseball. They talk about hitting, they talk about catchers, they talk about opposing hitters. So they're still exchanging information. I don't know if that's breaking any baseball code or not, but these guys are both willing to acknowledge it at the time. And you could tell that there's a very strong, deep bond there. They go hunting together in the off seasons. These guys are going to be friends through thick and thin. Doesn't matter who they're playing for.
Yeah, I guess it's fine as long as Jeff Mathis isn't at the plate and Mike Napoli's behind the plate telling him what pitch is coming. He can't do that.
Well, I'm sure there's something going on there for sure. There's some type of talking going on, but
somebody must be giving Jeff Mathis the pitches this season. The way he's hitting, he's never done this in his career.
Sure, no, he hasn't. But it's interesting. Mathis was actually the Angels' first-round draft pick. He went 33rd overall in 2001. I'm sure that's going to surprise a lot of people. Mike Napoli went in the 17th round. So Jeff Mathis came out of high school. He's a terrific athlete. He's still in phenomenal shape. He was actually a star quarterback in high school. He could have played NCAA Division I football as a quarterback. But he chose baseball because he knew that was the path for him.
Travis Snider's a guy that we've seen great offense out of at times. Guy has not gotten a chance to stick in the major leagues. Right now, Shai Davidi's got a column on Sportsnet.ca about Travis Snider, who's a little bit banged up. They have a 7-day DL down in the minor leagues, so he was on that a little bit. But right now, Eric Thames working his way through a little bit of a slump right now, but off to a great start. Doesn't look like he's going anywhere, but Travis Snider, kind of the forgotten man right now.
Yes, kind of, but Travis, to his credit, has had a great attitude throughout this latest setback. He's jammed this wrist 3 times already in the past before. It's the same wrist. It's his right wrist. He hurt it diving for a ball in the outfield. Travis, if you follow him on Twitter, you can see he's always taking the high road. He's not going to get down on himself, beat himself up. That's something he's done in the past when he was a teenager. He's openly acknowledged that. He's just biding his time right now. He's in no rush to get back. He doesn't want to re-aggravate the wrist injury. As Shai Davidi talks about in his column, don't expect Travis Snyder to be pushing himself too hard too soon.
It's great stuff. Jeff Mathis, the story from Mike Cormack is Mathis and Napoli, mates for life. It's a great story. Thanks a lot for this, Mike.
Anytime, Ben.
There's Mike Cormack. That'll do it for another edition of In the Zone presented by TD. Of course, follow me on Twitter, follow Mike on Twitter, follow Mike Wilner on Twitter. We'll see you next week.